Сәхибҗамал һәм Кәрим Габдулла әрләшәләр тәрәзә артында. Сәхибҗамал тиздән китәр Уфага, 6 ел бар әле инкыйлабка.
Mende everyone, it's Violetta, and welcome back to another episode of Diversity Podcast, where we explore various cultures and histories from a first-hand experience. Today, I have a very special guest. It's actually my first guest from another Asian Republic of Russia, and her name is Sendema. Sendema is ethnically Buryat, however, she did grow up in Sakha, or Yakutia, Republic of Yakutia, which is another national republic of Russia with native population. So Sendema, in my opinion, and from my interaction with her, is not only very closely connected to her ancestors and her lineage, but also she has literally family ties with Mongolia, and she has spent a lot of time in Asia actually, as she studied in China and now she lives in Thailand. You can tell it's quite a fascinating mix. So just a head ups, guys, just to make you aware, Buryat people is like our brotherly nation to Kalmyk people, because it's another Mongolic ethnic group native to Siberia. And they live in the Republic of Buryatia, which is located in Siberia. Unlike Kalmykia, because Kalmykia is located in southwestern part of Russia, but the Buryat people, because they originated from Mongolia, they are native to Siberian region, so they live in Siberian part of Russia, in Siberia, with the capital Ulan-Ude. So whilst preparing for this episode, I realized that Buryat, the history of Buryat people, pretty much like a Kalmyk one, deserves its separate, not just a book, but its own channel, podcast channel, with detailed explanation of the sad events which took place throughout 20th century. Unfortunately, obviously, there was a lot of happy chapters as well, but 20th century, as you all know, people, due to Soviet policies and due to oppression, were quite tough on many nations, not just for ethnic minorities, right? You're all probably aware of Stalin's repressions and etc. So we will mention and we will talk about these chapters in today's episode as well as we will explore Sendema's identity and Buryat culture as well. So without further ado, let's welcome Sendema. Sendema, thank you for being a part of my podcast today. I'm super excited about our episode today.
Hi, Sendema. Thank you for inviting me to your podcast.
All right, yeah, thanks for participating. Yeah, so Sendema means hi in Buryat language. We Kalmyk people mostly say it. We do say Sendema as well, but we mostly say Mende, I think, or Mendefte. Do you say Mende as well?
Yeah, we also say Mende. It's like less official.
So let's start from you, from your personal story, Sendema. Could you please share with us and with all people a little bit more about your origin? Where did you grow up? Where you were born? And whether if you have a tribal division still in Buryatia, what tribe would you belong to? And just let's start with this.
I was born in Buryatia in Horin-Emak or Horinsky district. So it's mostly Hori Buryat tribe there. When I was 1 month old, I moved to Yakutia. I mean, my mom and me, we moved to Yakutia. And since then, I was living in Yakutia and mostly, like, I can say that I grew up in Yakutia because I never actually lived in Buryatia before my adulthood. So in my childhood, I was just visiting Buryatia sometimes, like once in a couple of years. So it's mostly, like most of the time I spent in Yakutia. So about tribes, I belong to the Ehirit tribe, which is like Western Buryats. And my clan is Chonas or Shona. In Buryat, we mostly say Shona, but in other like dialects, for example, I know that in Kalmykia you also have this clan Chona, and in Mongolia also like I think quite a big clan Chonas, and
I think it's quite a big it's a big tribe. Yeah, we have Chonas as well. I don't really know anyone from there, I think, but but you're not Chonas, you Hori, yeah?
No, I am Shona. Chonas, yeah, I am.
You are Chonas?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, because Shona clan is like one of the many other clans of the Ehirit tribe. So my father's side is like Ehirit tribe and Chono clan.
There are many tribes, because I feel like, because as I understand, Buryatia was originally a mixture of different tribes. You have many tribes, right? Is it like, do you have division like depending on IMAC there is a tribe, or it's not depending on geography, the tribal division? Is it connected to tribal division, geography?
It is connected, but not always, because one tribe can live like in different parts, but yeah, it's kind of depends on the geography too. And there are 4 main tribes, but there are more tribes than 4, but the like main Buryat tribes are Hori, Ehirit, Bulagat, and Hongodor. Yeah, it's like I guess the biggest tribes of Buryat.
All right, understood. Interesting. Okay, I will ask you more a bit about tribes in a bit as well. Actually, whilst we're still here, do you have a different dialect between tribes, or it's all the same Buryat language? Talking about language.
Yeah, we have a lot of different dialects. We have so many dialects, like in different area, different tribe is completely different.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. But do you understand all of them?
Personally, me, no, I don't understand all of the dialects. I mean, it's kind of, it's very similar, but there are also like completely different words, and without knowing the dialect, you cannot actually understand what that word means. Some of the, some of the dialects, they are closer to half Mongolian language. Half Mongolian, yeah. So, for example, like Sangol, Sartul tribes, they speak that they speak the dialect that is kind of close to half Mongolian sound. It sounds closer to them.
All right, understood. Mm-hmm. Okay, I will actually have few questions about language, but I will ask you about this later. So we go step by step. Okay, great, thank you. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that you have dialects, because for us, I think it's mostly Kalmyk language. And I think just people, obviously not many speak the language, but okay, yeah, we will touch on the language a little bit more in a bit. So back to Buryatia and people. So if you could, just from your own experience or understanding, could you please tell us who are Buryats and what is the history of their origin? Because when I researched online, I found few different versions of the origin of the word and etc. So if you could just explain this to our listeners first.
I can say that Buryat nation is basically the union of Mongolian tribes. If we go back to like ancient history before Mongols even formed, there were Hunnu and Dunhu nomads in our areas, and that's why in Buryatia, Mongolia, and southern Mongolia, we have slab grave culture, or культура плиточных могил in Russian. So there are like burials of ancient nomads, and anthropologically they were Mongoloid, and like historians link these burials with Dunhu and Hunnu. So Dunhu and Hunnu basically our ancestors, like of all Mongols. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I know about Hunnu, but I didn't know about Huns. But Dunhu, I didn't know. Mm-hmm. Is it like a brotherly relation to Guns? Dunhu.
No, Dunhu, they're ancestors of Sanbi, and Sanbi and Hunnu, they were related, but they were still fighting each other.
All right.
Yeah, and once Sanbi leader defeated Hunnu, and that caused Hunnu to fall apart into 4 different branches. One of the branches got assimilated by Sanbi, and they became they stayed in our area and became our ancestors. And one of the branches of Hunnu went to the west and became Guns. So Guns and
Alright.
Hunnu not completely same. Of course, they're related, but Guns are that part of Hunnu that went to the west. And our ancestors are not Guns, but Hunnu that stayed in our area.
All right. When you say Guns and Hunnu, I thought it's like the same thing, but it's two different. How do they call it in Russian? Gunni and
Gunni and
Hunnu.
Hunnu.
Okay, so Hunnu, those who did not live to the west, they are ancestors of Buryats, right? Well, I guess of Oirats as well.
Of all the Mongols.
Okay. All right, that's interesting. So just to recap, so basically the Buryat people, because I would ask you later more about how the Buryat Republic was formed. So Buryat people essentially it was different tribes which were on that area, right? Native to Siberia, where currently Buryatia is with Ulan-Ude. So it was a bunch of tribes. It wasn't just one Buryat tribe like Oirat, like it wasn't like that, right? So it was different tribes. Okay, understood. So what would be the official version of what does the word Buryat mean, if there are one exists? Because I've read few different, and some of them even connected to mythology, so I wasn't sure which one is correct. There is one saying that the word coming from Bayriku and Kurikani, Bargujin Tukuma. Is that ring the bell for you? Or not really?
Well, I don't think there is I don't think we can know for sure where it comes from, because there are, as you said, there are different versions, and we cannot really know for sure where it came from. Yeah, and also I wanted to add, as I said, ancestors of Mongols were Sanbi and Hunnu, but also what I read when I was researching this topic is that long time ago there was a big migration from the west of Europeoid people, and this culture is called Khirigsuurs culture, and you can still find there burials in our areas too. And this Khirigsuurs culture, as I said, they were Europeoid, and historians and anthropologists they think that they belong to the Scythian culture, and they got mixed with the local nomads. They are also considered to be our ancestors as the mixture of local nomads, and that Khirigsuurs people, they kind of formed us. So
all right, I never heard about it.
Yeah, what's really curious is that before I was thinking I was wondering why our Turkic Mongolian nomads have this light hair, green eyed, ginger people, and it's pretty common, right, among all the Turkic Mongols.
Yeah, we have them a lot. Yeah,
and I was wondering why it's like that. And it's not just when it's not really related with Russian colonization. It's not that, because even in ancient times, even during Genghis Khan, there were people like that. And I was wondering, interesting, how does it works? And now when I read about Khirigsuurs culture, that we actually most likely mixed with some Scythian people. That makes sense, right? Because they were Europeoid race.
Yeah, so basically you're saying that Khirigsuurs, from what you're saying, are part of Scythian culture, right? And Scyths are Europeoids. All right, yeah, I haven't heard about this as well. It's interesting because I find it's really bizarre as well. Sometimes, I have few classmates back in Kalmykia who they look almost like Kazakh, some Kazakh girls, they look very light-skinned and light-haired, almost like brown, yellow hairs, and I don't have a look like that. But then when you start asking them, they're like, no, I'm pure Kalmyk. I'm not mixed or anything like that. By the way, how does in Buryat, what word do you say for a mixed person? For example, in Kalmykia, if the mother one of the parents is Kalmyk and the other one is Russian, we say baldır. What do you say? Do you have the word for it?
So my grandma just says halimak. It's like mixed.
Halimak?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
In Buryat language, halimak means mixed?
Yeah, my grandma just says halimak. But there are also other different words.
So basically, in your language, halimak means mixed.
Yeah, halimak.
That's interesting. Is it because of the Turkic influence? Because Kalmak means separated, like almost late, separated, something like that. I just wonder if that's the same terminology. Okay, I will read about it. Actually, I didn't know that. It's interesting. So back to Buryats, and I understand the Buryats were different tribes, which now currently form a Republic of Buryatia. And I would ask you also in a bit what were the stages of the formation. But presently, where exactly do Buryats live today in the world and in Russia? What would you say? Because when I read online, it says Russia, few different regions of Russia, Mongolia, due to history, obviously, and some other places. So from your understanding and knowledge, where Buryats live today, predominantly and not predominantly?
Well, mostly Buryats live in the Republic of Buryatia, but also they live in Irkutskaya Oblast, in Забайкальский край.
All right, so mostly in Siberia, yeah?
Yeah, in Siberia.
In Mongolia, would you say Buryats live in Mongolia presently, or mostly they mixed and assimilated because of the repressions, which we will talk about it?
Well, there are still Buryats living in Mongolia, like quite a lot, and also in Inner Mongolia or Southern Mongolia, in China.
All right. What would be the number, if you know, in thousands in Mongolia? Are there thousands or less?
No, I don't know the numbers, but I think there are a lot of Buryats there.
Okay, great. So actually, whilst we're still on the topic of Buryatia, can you just say, if you're aware, if you know, in stages, historically wise, what were the stages of formation of Republic of Buryatia? Because I understand if the Siberia was not conquered by Russia, like Republic of Buryatia wouldn't have existed now, right? It would have been just Mongolian tribes.
Yeah.
But what I read, that there were tribes, and then when the Siberia was conquered, there was something formed, and then they were still called something like the Baikalsky Polk when there was a wartime, and then only in 20th century it get to the name of Mongol Buryat Autonomous Republic or something like that. Mm-hmm. Do you know what were the stages of how did Republic of Buryatia came to be?
Before, like, we were a part of Mongol Empire before, then later when Mongol Empire like fell apart, when there was like Qin dynasty took over in China. We were not in Qin dynasty, but we were also influenced by it, and later Russians colonized us, and then after the revolution, when the Red Army won, there was a Buryat Mongolian SSR, and then later it became just Buryat SSR. And then after the Soviet Union collapsed, it became a Buryat Republic.
So initially it was basically Mongolia, because by that time the area of Siberia where Buryatia now is did not belong to Russia, right? Because Russia was Kiev Rus, it was smaller, and then it conquered. Yeah. Okay, understood. But you see, just to be clear, because you also grew up in the Republic of Sakha, in Sakha people do not belong to Mongolia, no way. It's just indigenous of Siberia, correct? And you are Mongolian and two different cultures. Just to be clear, because a lot of people mix. I think a lot of people mix and do not understand that, okay, there is like Mongolian natives to Siberia because the whole region used to belong to Mongolia, right? And there is also like Siberian natives who are Turkic. Actually, it's worth doing another podcast episode with Sakha person. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So when you are in Buryatia, you've been there, right? Even though you didn't grow up there, you've been there.
Yeah.
You have family there, right? Or most of your family in Yakutia?
Well, most of the relatives there in Buryatia, but like my father, my grandparents, my uncle, and they're all in Yakutia.
My next question would be, when you are in Buryatia, you've been to other probably Russian regions, right? Maybe in Moscow or somewhere else. Do you feel that when you're in Buryatia, you can feel strongly that it's a different region, you know, like with its own identity, its own culture? Do you feel that strongly there? Because for me, in Kalmykia, you definitely feel that. And a lot of people were very surprised when they come to Kalmykia because it looks very and feels very different. But obviously Buryatia is quite Siberian region. And I haven't been there yet, unfortunately. Actually, I got a new nephew this year. My cousin had a child, and he's half Buryat, and I haven't met them yet. So my cousin married a girl, and she's Buryat, and they actually invited me to come and travel to Buryatia, which I cannot wait to go, but I just don't know when it's gonna happen. We're all connected now.
Yeah.
Anyways, so my question, it's interesting, right? They actually told me, if you want, you can come to Buryatia.
Yeah, you should definitely visit.
New family, and then they were like, oh, Mongolia is also nearby, we can all go together. I was like, wow, that would have been amazing. I just don't know when I'm gonna be able to go. But anyways, like, do you feel that Buryatia has its own identity basically when you go there? What would you say? How would you describe Buryatia?
Yes, Buryatia definitely has its own vibe. Yeah, you can feel it's completely different from other regions. You can see traditional cuisine restaurants like booths. You can see our temples like Buddhist temples. The nature is different from other regions. So there are there are some unique things in Buryatia, definitely.
Would you say Buryat people, they like really, because I think every Kalmyk person, it's like a goal for almost every Kalmyk person, at least those who I know, to travel to Mongolia one day. It's like a dream of everyone, and a lot of people actually do go to Mongolia. Are Buryat people feel the same in your understanding, in your experience, that they really feel like these ties with Mongolia and they all want to go there and they go there, or they kind of like chill pill and they don't really care about Mongolia because they're in Buryatia and they're Buryat?
I guess many people like to visit Mongolia since it's very close to us, like we are at the border, so it takes like some hours on a bus or on a train, so it's very easy, or like just 1 or 2 hours on a plane, I don't remember exactly. So many people just go there, even like driving their own car, and can go there for like couple days.
Do Buryat people move there, or they just go traveling?
Mostly traveling, but
Traveling.
yeah, recently more Buryats moved to Mongolia, but I don't know how many of them actually stayed there for a long time. I don't know, because you still need to speak Mongolian language fluently in order to live there and to work.
Yeah, definitely. When you were there, were you able to understand Mongolian language, or it's difficult?
It took some time to like adjust, and I could understand some, basic things. I could like say some basic things for daily life, like go to the
like Sanbeinur.
No, I could like go to the
things?
supermarket and like communicate there, or like order food, order drinks, or order a taxi, or like ask the way somewhere. It was like okay for me to everything I needed for the life, like like basic life. It was enough for me. Like my knowledge was enough.
All right. But you see like that. You find a lot of because for me, I can understand some Mongolian words, and like obviously when they talk, I can catch some words, but if they talk fluently, it's hard for me to understand. Do you understand when they talk fluently?
No, not really. Like,
Yeah.
it depends. Sometimes, sometimes I also understand some words. Like, okay, I can understand half of the words in one sentence, and then I can guess what they said. Or sometimes I could understand everything, or sometimes like zero. It's always like so different.
All right. Depend. Also, they have different dialects, right? There in Mongolia.
Well,
So
yeah, but
I'd say so.
yeah, they mostly speak like half Mongolian now.
Talking about Mongolia and ties, I read online about Buryat people and culture that kinship and lineage were extremely important in Buryat culture before the arrival of Russians, so before the conquest of Siberia. And do you think it's still the same? It's important and people pay a lot of attention to their lineage, or they try to worship their ancestors. And if it is so still, what do you think the reasons for that? Obviously, I understand that in Mongolian culture it's very important, but from your own experience, if it is still stands, why do you think it's important? Why the lineage is deeply being connected to your lineage is so crucial in Mongolian culture, in Buryat culture, in your understanding? If not, give me the reasons why you think it's not.
Yes, it is still very important, and most of the Buryats, they still know their tribes, their clans, and even like their ancestors still like seventh generations, behind you. So before it was a must, and nowadays it's not like a must, but still many people, they still remember their ancestors, because I think it's related not just to like our nomadic culture, because all nomads, including like Kazakhs, Kyrgyz, they all know their ancestors' names, they all know their tribe, clan, and since we're nomads, it was like part of our culture and history and way of living, and the tribal division was really important back then. You had to know your own tribe, and you had to ask other people's tribes in order to understand, or are they your friends, your relatives, are they your enemies? It was like very important. And also even our traditional religion, our traditional beliefs, like Tengri, is also it is also about remembering your ancestors and like keeping in touch with them. So that's why I think traditionally it played a huge role for us to like remembering your roots. I guess during the USSR, all these religious practices, they were banned, so I guess we lost some, and also there were wars, repressions, and it also made many people forget or lost connections with some of their ancestors, some of their like relatives, because nowadays some people they just for example, children of war, like our grandparents' generations, some of them just lost their parents and lost the connection with their ancestors. But mostly we still like to remember like where we came from.
All right, thank you. Understandable. Yeah, I actually wanted to link this question to my next question, to religious practices, because as you probably already know, and we previously discussed with you, that in Mongolian culture, for me personally, it's quite spiritual culture, because Kalmyk people not forever been Buddhist, Buddhism came at some point, and before that we had Tengrism, paganism, and partly shamanism. So talking about Buryatia today and Buryatia in old days, what you guys used to practice? Well, I reckon it's Buddhism as well, right? But is it predominantly Buddhism nowadays? And if you have shamanism, to what extent shamanism is prevalent in your region? Because for us, shamanism is not very big. I know there's some still people like just singular people like единицы still practice it. But I have heard and I read and I talked to some family and some people and yourself, and I heard and read that shamanism is quite still big in Buryatia. Not big, but it exists, which is interesting. And my question is, what are religious and spiritual practices in Buryatia now? And if there is a shamanism, to what extent it is there?
Well, first of all, Western Buryats, they maintained more of shamanic practices and shamanic traditions than Eastern Buryats. Eastern Buryats, they are more into Buddhism. But nowadays, shamanism, Tengrism is kind of comes back, is kind of getting a, new life, so
Revival.
Well, yeah, revival. Yeah, I think it started in maybe 90s, because for a long time, during Soviet Union, we couldn't really practice it. So it took some time for us to come back to it again. Yeah, and for example, my great grandpa, he was a shaman during the USSR, but he had to hide it. He had to practice it in secretly. Yeah.
All right. Have he told you any stories about that? How it was probably dangerous, right?
Yeah, it was dangerous. That's why it was all just some people could visit him, come to his house, and he could help them in his own ways. So because we all live in this modern world, etc., do you think a lot of people have prejudices, towards spiritualism and especially shamanism? And you probably remember there was this shaman from Yakutia, I think he was in the media a lot. Do you remember his name? I don't remember his name. Do you remember? Yeah.
There was a shaman who was walking Yeah, it's not Buryat, it's Yakutian, right? He's from Yakutia.
Yeah, Yakutian.
Yeah. And I feel there is a lot of negative prejudices around spiritual practices and shamanism, even though I find myself it's very interesting and fascinating. And I think definitely our culture is rooted into that. Because of that, my question is, do you think that some people perceive shamanism as something strange? Or do you think because, I don't know, you grew up in Siberia, it's something normal, it's for every day, it's go to have a coffee, so it's normal for you? Or have you experienced that some people would, if you would discuss shamanism with someone or even tell that it was in your family, some people would not understand that? Have you ever experienced that?
Yeah, it's kind of half-half. It's 50-50. Some people, they completely chill with that. If I start to talk about shamanism, they will understand because they also grew up in this culture. But some people, they just think that it's something from the past. So it's something that we don't really need in the modern world. Yeah. And they just don't understand why would someone even, be interested in something like this nowadays. But even with Buddhism, since we have Tibetan Buddhism, it already came to us in a changed form, because it was kind of mixed with the Tibetan original religion Bon. So it came to us in that mixed form, mixed shape, and then also it mixed with our traditional beliefs, and that's why, as I can see nowadays, Buryat Buddhism also has a lot of shamanic practices. Even our Buddhist monks, they still do the rituals related to how to say, giving some gifts to the spirits, of the place, or the water spirits.
Yeah, we have same thing, I think. So we just not only worship ancestors, but we give a tribute, or what would be the word for подношение, yeah? So you have to give to nature, or to water, right? Or to fire, to give something, some sort of energy. And Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's pretty much mixed as well. It's just growing up in Kalmykia, I've never really experienced or faced shamanism myself, even like knowing, because what we have in Kalmykia is home appointments. I just wanted to ask you as well, whilst we're still on religion, whether you have something like that, because from my understanding it is connected to USSR and to the ban of religion, because people couldn't really properly practice these spiritual beliefs, whether Buddhism or shamanism, so they had to hide it. That's why in Kalmykia, and also when I was just born, we only had one proper Buddhist temple. You call it Datsan, yeah? Datsan is Khurul for you, the temple.
Yes.
And we call it Khurul. Only one, and then when I was like 10 years old, a bit smaller, younger, there was new big temple built out in Sumer. Before that, there was only one temple for the whole republic, and normally people would just go to monks' houses. It's almost like they're healers. I just wanted to ask you whether you have the same thing. You go to the monk's private appointment or something like that. Do you have that?
Yeah, we still like have that. I remember like growing up in Yakutsk, because there were no Buddhist temples in Yakutsk city, but there were some Buddhist monks there. We could just visit them, go
at
to
home,
their
right?
home. Yeah, at home.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's kind of, these Buddhist monks, they kind of took over the role of the shaman before that. Like shamans, they were doing these services before, and then later Buddhist monks, they just started to do something similar to, I guess, to replace shamans.
All right. Yeah, I don't really know what shamanist practices in Kalmykia. I am only aware of Buddhism and like this semi-home appointment. Okay, interesting. Because you were in Mongolia a couple of times, I wanted to ask you as well whether you see any difference between shamanism in Mongolia and shamanism in Buryatia, or is it the same thing? What do you think?
Oh, like my personal impression was that it's completely different. I'm not sure what are the exact reasons of it, but I felt like Mongolian shamanism is more authentic, like less influenced by the Buddhism, because I felt like the shamanism in Buryatia is influenced by Buddhism. Yeah, so it felt like something is off, I mean, there are definitely some strong shamans in Buryatia, like for sure, and there are different unions of shamans, organizations.
So there are unions of shamans in Buryatia.
Yeah, there are different organizations. Like the most famous one is called Tengri. Well, I cannot judge all of the shamans of Buryatia by seeing just some of them, but still I had that impression that Mongolian shamans, they kind of practicing more authentic shamanism.
I have maybe one or two more questions about shamanism, because it's something new to me. I know it used to be part of a culture in a way, but not really totally aware about that, because I've talked to Lavel, and he told me that shamanism are really strong still there in Mongolia. Well, he's talking about Inner Mongolia, right? Because Inner Mongolia is quite, I think it's traditional, and he told me that people still rely on non-Western medicine, so they still rely on this type of treatment from shamanism and spiritual practices, and I didn't really know. I don't really have friends in Mongolia, so that's interesting to me. So that's why I want to ask. If you feel like it's too private or too personal, don't answer, but I'm still gonna ask. How does one become a shaman, first of all, and second of all, how does it work? Is it the same as when you go to monk and they pray for you, or it works differently? You have to is there a different process of going to a shaman or attending one? So first question is, how does one becomes a shaman? And second question, what exactly happens when you go to shaman?
A person can become a shaman only in case if that person has shaman ancestors, and if he was chosen by his shaman ancestors to be a shaman. So it's like not a person's choice, but the spirit's choice. They have to choose him and, to become a shaman. And that person doesn't really have other choice but to become a shaman, to be and become a shaman. Because if that person doesn't want to be a shaman, it will be really bad for him, because he can get like really, really sick. He can, go crazy and, start drinking a lot of alcohol, and just everything in his life will go really bad. And that's why a person literally is kind of forced to become a shaman. The second question, you just visit a shaman, and a shaman, it depends on the problem you have. If it's like not so, big of, like it's not so big, then a shaman can just, check you, or, there are different kinds of instruments that they use. Some shamans can use like coins, some shamans can use like stones, some shamans can use sheep bones.
Right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or like cards. There are different ways, or like looking on the water, to answer your questions. But sometimes if it's like really important, then they can ask their own god, which is their shaman ancestor spirit, and they can like let the on god enter their body and talk through them and answer all your questions. Or like on god, like since we believe that shaman ancestor lives in that upper spirit world, that means that spirit has the access to more information, and can also give a person information about his ancestors, or kind of know what problems you have in your family. It's like they have the access to more information through the spirit world.
All right, that's interesting. I have 10 more questions, but we're gonna move further. I'll ask you later about that. Sounds really interesting, and I really want to visit Mongolia and see how it works there, actually. Okay, just still whilst we on this topic, I wanted to briefly ask you about language, because I think language is quite a wide topic as well, and it deserves probably a separate episode. What is the state of Buryat language today? Do people speak fluently or not really, or depending on the location, whether they're from urban or suburban areas, and whether you still learn it in school, whether it's being taught, and is it similar process to Kalmyk language? Because we used to have script, which was turned into Cyrillic in end of 20s, I think, or beginning of 30s. And then here we are with Kalmyk language being a Cyrillic language. But it used to be Todobichik. So what was before Cyrillic in you? So few questions. What is the state of Buryat language today in Buryatia, whether people speak it? And second language, what was the transition to current Cyrillic alphabet?
So mostly young people in the cities, they don't really speak Buryat language well, unfortunately, because we don't have much of Buryat classes in the schools. As I know, there are like some schools, they have like Buryat language classes, but it's not really enough, because it can be like once a week, or it's not enough to learn a language, especially if you don't practice it at home, if you don't speak it with someone else. But Buryats in the villages, they speak Buryat language. It's like their first language. So all hope, it's like the future of Buryat language depends on them too, because they still use it every day, unlike the Buryats in the cities. And the second question about our writing is, we also used the traditional Mongolian writing before, and then later we also started to use we started to use that Latin alphabet.
You had Latin as well.
And then we started to use the Cyrillic alphabet.
All right.
Yeah.
Understood. So, did it happen in 30s, as like with us as well? In the 30s, when there was forced, there was policy of forced Latinization and Kyrillization, I think. Yeah. So it happened around the same time. Okay. So we're gonna wrap up soon, but the very important topic before we wrap up, I wanted to talk to you about repressions, and as I said, it was the saddest chapter of 20th century, I think even worse than Second World War. So let's just talk about Buryat repressions of 1930s, okay? So I just make a little intro for listeners. As I understand, it's like one of the most horrific chapters in the history of Buryat people. And from my research and reading, maybe it's been slightly overlooked, or maybe I didn't research enough. You will correct me if I'm wrong. So that's my personal opinion, that it's been overlooked. I understand now why people wouldn't talk about it, because of the current situation of how everything it is in Russia. However, I think it's one of the topics which should be taught even in schools, to my opinion, because I think a lot of people like you and me who concerned about culture and language, and even though I'm not perfect and I don't speak perfect Kalmyk, but I'm trying to reconnect and learn. And I think in order to build brighter future, if we can call it brighter future for next generations, we have to know at least our history, at least like 100, 200 years ago. And in 1930s, when I started researching, I was just surprised and shocked by the scale of these repressions, because obviously when it happens in genocides and repressions, there is no exact numbers, but from what I read, it says thousands of people were repressed, exiled and killed, shot. Some sources say tens of thousands, десятки тысяч, yeah. So and they were mostly accused in pan-Mongolism. So pan-Mongolism, basically, I think a listener would understand, it's that when Mongolian tribes unite to be one. However, when I was reading it, I got understanding that it all started with decolonization. There was politic of decolonization in Soviet Union, and then from what I read, it turned into these repressions due to pan-Mongolism. Could you just elaborate slightly on that? And I don't know, from your personal experience, from what you learned in school, in life, and maybe even from your family, whether it touched in some ways your own family, these repressions of 1930s, which had just a massive scale, apparently. So yeah, if you could just talk about this in few sentences, feel free, even a few minutes, whatever.
As you said, in 30s, like in the end of like 20s and the 30s, there were like thousands of people killed, repressed, shot, and deported. We were like accused in pan-Mongolism because there were some great politicians that just wanted us to get united with Mongolia and Tuva, because when in 1911 Mongolia became independent from China, we just, some of us just started to think about that, well, we are Mongols, we should be together. Yeah, it makes sense. It just makes sense. It's just self-determination, it's like, it's our right? But of course the Soviet Union didn't want to let us go, obviously, and that's why in the 30s they started to punish everyone who was supporting that idea, and they killed all the intelligentsia, like all the politicians, and of course all the monks and just ordinary people. Even like many of those people, they didn't even do anything in the, in these political games. They just were accused for nothing. My family, my great-grandfather and his brother and like people from the same village, they, during the war between like white and red army. They already wanted to run away to Mongolia, but then the red army won, and the borders were closed, and they couldn't go to Mongolia, so they stayed in Buryatia. But my great-grandmother's relatives, like part of them, they were running away from these repressions. There was like pregnant woman, and she lost her husband, and she had to run to Mongolia because she had a brother in Mongolia. That's why like part of my relatives from my great grandma's side, they are in Mongolia now. And I found them. Yeah.
All right, so they were managed to run away to Mongolia.
Yeah.
What year was it?
In 30s. Yeah,
in the 30s. So when the repression...
Yeah.
Also, your family, the one in Mongolia, I will ask now in a bit one more question about it. So the family now you have in Mongolia, they exactly ran away when they went to Mongolia, to Mongolia when the repression took place, correct?
Yes.
All right,
that's why
understood.
we, before that, because we are nomads, we could just, move around and go to Mongolia.
Just go
or
freely,
like,
right?
Mongolia. Yeah, go freely, and everyone had like relatives there, or like, oh, there more grass over there, let's go there, let's move there. But later when the, borders got like shut down, we became separated from each other, like relatives got separated from each other, and that's pretty sad. And that's why it's kind of like we became, with the time, with decades and generations, we became more, how to say, distant from each other, even mentally.
Yeah, I understand. So this story of yours, of your family who live in Mongolia now, can you just tell us shortly? Because I read your post online and it's actually amazing. So Sendema, as Sendema mentioned, in 1930s, some of her family relatives were managed to escape to Mongolia because of these horrific repressions which happened in Buryatia. And Sendema actually a few years ago were able to reconnect with her Mongolian relatives without even knowing them. Could you please tell us a story of reconnecting with your family who lives in Mongolia now? So yeah.
So once I visited my grandpa's sister in Buryatia, and I just was looking at the old photos, and I've seen a photo of my great grandma in Mongolia with her relatives, like visiting her relatives in Mongolia in Henti Emak, and I was like surprised. I didn't know that I have relatives in Mongolia before, so that was the first time I found it out. And I didn't know any names, I didn't have any contacts, and I just decided to post this photo like on my Facebook page and just write like, oh, looking for relatives. If you recognize anyone on this photo, please let me know, contact me. People started to share it, and one of my good friends, she shared it to the Henti Emak group, and my relatives found me like the same day. They just saw that photo and that post that I made, and they just contacted me, and then we like met up. That was really nice.
Wow. Were you post in Mongolian or in Buryat language? How did they see your post? Because it was reposted a lot.
In Mongolian.
Oh, you wrote a post in Mongolian language?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Do you think if you'd written the post in Russian or in Buryat language, do you think they would find you as well or no?
In Buryat, I think, yeah, but not in Russian. In Russian, no one would understand in Russian.
That's really crazy, right? Because I think even though Mongolia is not the most populated country, but still it's really like, I think like one on the thousands maybe the case. Like it's rare, isn't it? From people you know now in Mongolia, and you have a blog, so I'd say I understand that you are interacting with different people, right? Is this common for Buryat people? Because Buryat in Mongols, Buryatia and Mongolia, is a bit different from Kalmykia and Mongolia because we are so far, For us, reconnecting is a little bit harder and it's also expensive to travel there. But as I understand, for Buryat people, traveling to Mongolia is pretty normal and common thing. So do you think because of your particular case, this situation of reconnecting with your family happens quite often now, or would you say people not really interested? Do many Buryat people have relatives in Mongolia and they are able to reconnect with them, or it's quite rare occasion? What do you say?
I think it's quite rare because I don't know any other cases like this. I haven't, seen something like this among my friends or on the internet. So,
all right,
it must be rare.
All right, but there are Buryat people in Mongolia who probably assimilated already, right? They speak Mongolian. Because of the repressions.
And
okay.
I know that many people in Mongolia that I talked to before, they telling me like, oh, like my great grandfather was Buryat or my great grandmother was Buryat, but or like even my Mongolian friend, she told me that she knows she has some relatives in Buryatia, but the connection is lost. So it's pretty hard to find them now because she doesn't like unlike me, she doesn't have any photo. I was lucky to have some photo so that I can post it.
You have really good pictures I've seen in your posts. They're like good quality as well. And is it pictures made by your family? Because they're good quality, yeah?
You mean the black and white old photos?
Yeah, black and white.
Yeah. There is like my great grandma, her brother, and others there. Like the rest, it's all our Mongolian relatives. I mean, Buryat relatives in Mongolia.
Buryat relatives in Mongolia. Okay, that's interesting. Generally, I think you understand and I understand that world now is globalized, right? And it's normal to migrate, whether you're nomad or not, you have nomadic paths or not nomadic paths. How do you think in this world, and I don't know, most likely my children's not going to be pure Kalmyk. I don't know about you, but probably not. Maybe yes. Right? I don't know. Have you ever dated Buryat person in the past?
No.
No, I don't think so. So most likely our children are not going to be, I don't want to be like Harry Potter, pure blood or anything like that, but mixed, let's say they'll be mixed. So what do you think are tools and ways of not just reconnecting with your identity and ancestors and culture? It's normal to learn and research it, whether you know or not know your culture. But how we can preserve that? How do you think, regardless of the fact that our generation of our children, let's say, they're most likely not going to be just 100% Asian Mongolian. How, in your personal understanding, how do you think, what would be the tools? Because from you, I have this vibe. I don't know, maybe in English you feel a little bit shy or anything. I feel like you feel a little bit shy maybe in English, but I do have this strong vibe from you, the energy that you are, I think you've been researching on your culture, on your identity, on your ancestry for years. I know that, you told me, but I feel that vibe from you as well. And I know you do it your own way. What would you advise to other people on how to preserve their own culture in, let's say, this globalized world, and the language, if possible?
Well, first of all, we have to learn our history and talk to our elderly and ask, the questions about their lives, their memories, and we have to try to learn our language, of course. I feel bad that I'm still not so fluent in Buryat, but I promised myself that when by the time I will have kids, I will speak much better Buryat so that I can talk to them in Buryat. And of course, most important part is that we have to learn and find out by ourselves who we are. We have to understand where we came from, because many young people nowadays, they're lost. They don't really know their background, and that's a problem, because if you don't know your background, how can you teach your kids? How can you pass it down. So we have to learn ourselves first, and then we can teach to our kids. And of course, it also takes some effort and like, you know, understanding of the importance of this, you know, to teach your kids about your culture and history, because I know so many families, so many people that know Buryat language well, they don't teach it to their kids, and that's a big problem.
All right.
Yeah, that's why it's very important to understand that if you know it yourself, it's not enough. You also have to teach your kids.
Right. Why do you think they don't teach it to their kids?
They don't really realize how important is it. They think it's not necessary nowadays. They think, oh, my kid is not gonna need it. He just needs to know Russian. And
okay, understand. Just not being aware that it's actually needed to be done in order to preserve the culture.
Lack of awareness.
Okay, interesting. I understand that though, but yeah, I definitely agree that if you know something, you have to pass it down. Even us, you know, like caring for trying to understand, track our lineage. I think even what you're doing, you actually inspired me when we talked a few months ago, and I saw either in your stories or we talked, I saw your family tree, and then like I remember that at some point I started doing my family tree, and then after I saw your story, I started redoing it, and I'm trying still to reconnect to some of my relatives, but a lot of them passed away already, so it's quite a challenge. But still, like, you motivated me in a way, you know, like, and I know like I motivate others in a way with my podcast and project. So yeah, I agree with you. Thanks for that. Yeah, I love what you're doing, because maybe I haven't followed you for a while because we just connected this year, but I see from your path that you've been researching on this for ages, for years, and I really respect that and I appreciate that. So I just wanted to say thank you, and for your time, for the podcast. I'm really excited to talk to you, and I hope people will learn more about Buryat culture and Mongolian culture. But especially, I was reading about the repressions. I was actually shocked because I knew that, but the scale of it, I didn't know. And I think we should try to spread more awareness on that, even if it will be one post, you know, 2 posts or one podcast episode. I think it's important because it's sad, but I think it's important to learn what happened and why did it happen, because it's pretty much similar to different things, different repressions, but what happened to Kalmyk people, the Siberian exile, because both of these repressions, they influenced the culture, and the way the culture was kind of lost in a way, you know, like people were migrated and placed here and there, abolished, and similar thing happened in my understanding, it's just in different scenarios and in different circumstances. So I hope that people will learn more about that, and there will be more accessible information on that. So thanks for your time, and let's wrap up now, and hopefully we'll do more content.
Thank you too.
I'm really excited.
Yeah, thank you for your podcast. As you just said, you actually doing a really important job in spreading the knowledge, awareness, and, you know, information about like us, about minorities like us. It's very important, especially like in English, because many people in the world, they don't even know we exist. So it's like thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the reason, you know, because like so many people who I've met for the podcast, they like, oh, they don't even know who's like, I think Sakha people, the even larger group, you know, but when I talk to someone about Sakha, they don't know that, and I'm surprised because my dream is really to spread more awareness on these minorities and indigenous cultures, because Russia is so rich and so diverse. People don't know that because there is no information in English about that, you know, like globally. I mean, within the Russia, I think within the Russia knowledge exists, but because no one really cares, or I don't know why, but it wasn't really translated everything to English, because whenever I try to access some rare tribes, sometimes these people don't even exist in digital world, you know, they just live their lifestyle, and which is amazing, and I respect that, and it's amazing how they preserve their culture and their lifestyle. But I think from anthropological point of view, it's very interesting and fascinating, Russia overall, like many other countries in the world, but Russia, I think, there's just so many untouched and unresearched topics, you know, so that's why I'm just getting always excited. So thank you for your time, and we obviously stay in touch, and we'll see what content in the future we will do more. Yeah, thanks a lot. Okay, so bye guys, and I see you in the next episode. Thanks for being with us today. Bye bye.
Газиз һәм хатыны Рабига очраштылар рәхмәт театрга әтисе кызны кабул итәр Газиз укый истфакта Әмирханның бар үзенең бүлмәсе һәр көн кеше килә Фатыйхларга Ибраһим бәй китте әмирлекләргә чыгасы